Live from the University of Alabama with special guests, feature stories, and a comprehensive look at Alabama's upcoming game. It's Crimson Tide Kickoff, brought to you by Alpha.
Before we go, what kind of win is this for the program?
We expected to get this. When you come to our house, we show you how to play some SEC ball. It don't matter where you're from. You're going to know what ball we play. We're going to next week ranked. That's fine. Alabama, you're next.
And good morning and welcome to Crimson Tide Kickoff, brought to you each and every week by Alpha Insurance. I'm Gary Harris, live inside our studios here at the Digital Media Center inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. But we have a team live at Vanderbilt Stadium in Nashville as well, getting ready for Alabama's SEC opener against the Vanderbilt Commodores, the Crimson Tide's first game in the Music City against the Doors since 2007. Well, you heard the confidence stemming from the Commodores after beating Kansas State last week. They're ready, at least they say, for the #1 team in the land, and we're ready for Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama headlines.
Well, no need to panic. That was Coach Saban's message earlier this week, but it's fair to say the defensive players were pretty disappointed in their performance against Colorado State last week. The Tide allowed nearly 400 yards of total offense and 23 points, which led senior linebacker Sean Dion Hamilton to call the defense's performance pathetic. A week to regroup could be just what the team needs to rebound against Vanderbilt. And that's where things start for the Crimson Tide in conference play. It's the SEC opener. Alabama begins its quest for a 4th straight conference championship, and the Commodores are in the way. The Tide is nearly perfect in SEC openers under Nick Saban. Both Vandy and Alabama are perfect through the first 3 games of the season. Vanderbilt is flying high after beating Kansas State, its first non-conference win against a ranked opponent since 1946. You heard the confidence coming out of the Commodores after that win last week. Nafe Lelo said, "Alabama, you're next." Here's the Crimson Tide's response.
Theoretically, we are next on their schedule, and we have to prepare, and we have to get ready to play a good Vanderbilt team. We've always done a good job of preparing, regardless of who we're playing. What's being said, we have to go out there and prepare. We have to be ready to play, because they're going to be ready to play.
No matter where you play, people are going to talk trash. But you just move forward and you try to execute. You can't play with emotion in this game.
But there will be plenty of emotions in the stands this afternoon. It's the biggest game at Vanderbilt Stadium in quite some time, maybe forever. But for Bama, the process remains the same. Even though this does mark the start of conference play, the preparation is no different than it was against Colorado State, Fresno State, or even Florida State. Alabama did its job in the non-conference, but all but one remaining regular season game are now against SEC teams. So Coach Saban says his team has to be ready.
Everybody's got to embrace the challenge of the SEC, the difficulty of the conference, the consistency in performance that you need to have play in, play out, game in, game out. So that's really the focus, that we have with our team right now, and everybody seems like they've responded pretty well.
And Saban's teams typically do respond well in SEC openers. He's 9-1 at Alabama in the first conference game of the season. Being on the road isn't too much of a concern either. Saban is 34-6 on the road in the SEC, 36-6 on the road overall. And Saban has 100 SEC victories. That's 5th all-time among head coaches. He could move into 3rd place on that list by the end of the season. Well, earlier I mentioned how Saban warned everybody not to panic. That was sort of a theme throughout the week. This team still has a lot to work on, and there is plenty of room for improvement. But there is a lot to be pleased about as well. And we'll hear more about that in Coach Talk, presented by Barkley Buick Cadillac GMC.
Sometimes you lose sight of the fact that we are 3-0. We have improved in a lot of areas of our team, and we'll continue to focus on the technical aspects of what we need to do to improve in some other areas, get some mistakes and mental errors corrected, and continue to try to develop, the players so that they have a better opportunity of being successful in whatever we have to defend or whatever we have to attack on offense or whatever we have to play against on special teams.
We, of course, as I stated earlier, have a crew at the site of today's game. Zach Tigert is live just outside of Vanderbilt Stadium with a nearly split crowd gathering for this afternoon's game. Zach?
Gary, at any given time in the Music City, you can hear some really good country music. And some of those songs may or may not be about this year's Crimson Tide football team. Let's start here at the Johnny Cash Museum in downtown. The man in black isn't around to say that Minka Fitzpatrick and Jonah Williams weren't the subjects of two of his hit songs. After all, Jonah Williams did star at Folsom High School before starring for the Crimson Tide. And I think Johnny Cash saw into the future and realized how versatile Minka Fitzpatrick would be for Alabama. He can play everywhere, man.
Trouble I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
And Johnny Cash isn't the only one. Several of Nashville's biggest stars, many of whom are featured on the Walk of Fame you see behind me, have written songs that seem to embody the Crimson Tide and many of its players. It's hard to imagine Garth Brooks wasn't thinking about Bo Scarborough's punishing runs, complemented by Damian Harris's shifty scampers. And somebody please tell LSU to quit playing this song at Tiger Stadium, because the Alabama defense will be calling on Baton Rouge native Dylan Moses to be an impact player this season with several injuries in the linebacker position. And is it really a stretch to assume that Mack Wilson was named after a Mack truck, like an 18-wheeler Mack truck? And one superstar enshrined on country music's Walk of Fame is Tim McGraw, and you cannot convince me that his 2016 hit Humble and Kind was not written about Alabama's Hale Hinches.
If you don't get the ball, that's a great thing, because I mean, a lot of times that means the other people are getting the ball.
Is really someone that anybody in this room, including me, could emulate and probably be better because of it.
Stay humble and kind.
And everyone knows that actions speak louder than words, and quarterback Jalen Hurts is a man of few words, but a man of many, many yards. And not every country star is enshrined in Nashville, but it would be foolish to forget about John Denver and his impact on country music. He sang the perfect song for lovable lineman Bradley Bozeman.
Small town country boy from Roanoke, Alabama.
And Denver's Rocky Mountain High could really be renamed the Ballad of J.K. Scott. Or maybe J.K. Scott is actually John Denver reincarnated.
Friends around the campfire and everybody's high.
It would be blasphemous to not have country music involved in this show since we're in Nashville. And who knew so many songs could be related to this year's Crimson Tide team? Gary?
Zach, you're a funny guy. Thank you. And now I'm joined by CTKO weather specialist Danielle Davis with us today. Now, earlier in the week, Danielle, Nick Saban said he thought it would be a good thing for his team to practice outside in the heat because he figured it was going to be hot in Nashville today, and that is going to be the case, right?
That is definitely the case. Whether you're in Tuscaloosa or Nashville this afternoon, heat is the main concern. Let's look at the radar. Clear day across central Alabama. Right now, temperatures in the mid-80s already, and that is the same back up in Nashville this afternoon. Here's your game forecast. 2:30 p.m. kickoff time at 90 degrees with mostly sunny skies, and that's going to be the case throughout the entire afternoon. By the end of the game, only down 2 degrees, so very hot. Make sure you stay hydrated this afternoon with lots of sunscreen. Over the next several hours, it's going to heat up just as well here in Tuscaloosa. Gary?
Thank you, Danielle, and don't go anywhere because we're just getting cranked up good here on CTKO presented by Alpha Insurance. Coming up, how the biggest concern of the offseason has quieted down and the injury bug bit again. The latest updates on the rehabbing linebackers and a tight end for the Tide who unfortunately is out for the season. Those stories and many more still to come on Crimson Tide Kickoff presented by Alpha Insurance. You keep it tuned to WVUA 23.
You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
Well, it's only the fourth game of the 2017 season, but we're always looking ahead here at CTKO. And this past week, the 2018 football schedule was released. Alabama opens its season on September the 1st in Orlando against Louisville. Will Lamar Jackson be back? I don't know. Week 2 is the home opener against Arkansas State, and then Alabama heads to Oxford, back to Mississippi for the SEC opener on September the 15th. Alabama returns home on September 22nd for A&M, and then Louisiana Lafayette on September 29th. Back on the road for Arkansas on October the 6th, and then a rematch of the 2014 SEC championship game when Missouri comes to Bryant-Denny Stadium on October the 13th. It'll be the Tigers' first trip to Bryant-Denny since joining the SEC. Then the Tide will fly over to Knoxville on the 20th, and then LSU on the road following the bye. Bama ends its regular season with 3 home games: Mississippi State, the Citadel, and the Iron Bowl against Auburn. And welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff, sponsored by Alpha Insurance. I'm Gary Harris here in our studios in Tuscaloosa. We'll go back to our team in Nashville in just a bit, but let's stay here in Titletown for now. The defense was not pleased with its performance against Colorado State last week. Not at all. But Bethany Miller has more on how the team dealt with the disappointment.
Hey, Gary, Alabama allowed almost 400 yards of total offense and 23 points to the Rams. Not your average day here in Tuscaloosa, but that's what led Sean Dion Hamilton to say that this team needed a come-to-Jesus moment. There was frustration, but the defense has since worked on getting back on track.
It's not typical that an Alabama defense allows 391 yards to an opponent, but last Saturday proved to be a frustrating exception for this Crimson Tide team.
We didn't execute very well defensively. And I think, not stopping the run, not getting off the field on third down, didn't play great in the red zone. So we have a lot of work to do.
It's definitely something we're going to have to clean up this coming next week. And I think this game would be something that we can build off of.
An unhappy Nick Saban and a defense that lacked execution and focus fueled rumors of a players-only meeting after the Colorado State win. This term may seem familiar after word traveled of one occurring after a bitter 43-37 loss against Ole Miss in 2015. Yes, that season. But it seemed that this meeting, if it was held, was kept only between Alabama and its players.
We want to keep that, just within the team. We just look forward to Vandy in the next challenge, keep on moving.
I mean, that's a team issue that if we need to handle it, we'll handle it. But, defense knows we didn't play up to our standard last game. We're going to get it fixed. And we need to get it fixed because we got conference play coming up.
Head coach Nick Saban, however, had some mixed feelings when asked about a players-only meeting occurring.
We don't want these things to be like feel-good meetings where, everybody feels good when they leave, but they were concerned when they started. So, it could be good or bad depending on how it's handled.
Now, whether a defensive meeting happened or not, what did help? A focused practice led by junior Minka Fitzpatrick.
All I did yesterday, I tried to fly around, make all the calls and stuff like that. Sean Dion doing the same thing. Just leading by example, and pretty much everybody followed. Everybody did what they're supposed to do, and so just leading with actions. I feel like it's a whole lot more beneficial than talking to people.
Now, it may surprise some fans when I say that Alabama is not statistically the best defense out on the field today. The Commodores lead the nation with 4.3 points allowed per game. Alabama tied for 16th with 13.3. It will be a very interesting game today as the defenses go head-to-head. For CTKO, I'm Bethany Miller.
And thank you, Bethany. Something tells me that Bama defense is going to be up to the challenge today in Nashville. But, of course, the defense could also get a big boost just by getting healthier. And it appears that's where the things are headed with the Crimson Tide defense. Coach Saban said earlier this week that linebackers Rashaan Evans, Anthony Jennings, and Dylan Moses all returned to practice this week and all could return to the field against the Commodores. Now, that will give the defense a big lift, especially in regards to the pass rush, but also in terms of vocal leadership. Evans was a captain in the season opener against Florida State, and even though he's been out for the past 2 weeks, he was still serving as a leader for his teammates.
Every day, practice on the sidelines. I mean, even if he wasn't out there, he's coaching guys up on the sidelines, and that's what you need as a leader, and we're happy that he's coming back.
Miller Forrestall will not be coming back. The sophomore tight end tore his ACL in the third quarter against Colorado State. Now, Alabama still has a lot of talent at the tight end position, but Bama was looking forward to a breakout season from the talented pass catcher from Georgia. He hopes to return at the beginning of next year. Now, that's the bad news for the offense. The good news is the offense had an efficient, productive performance against Colorado State. Now, it was balanced, and just about as balanced as an offense can get. The Tide had 239 rushing yards to go along with 248 through the air. Jalen Hurts was 12 of 17 through the air and had 103 yards on the ground. But what is perhaps more impressive is ball security. Alabama hasn't had a turnover since last season's Iron Bowl. And Coach Saban said that is a big credit to the Alabama quarterback.
We harp on ball security. The first thing we do in practice every day is ball security drills. We include him in those drills, and he has done a much better job of taking care of the football, and we've done a really good job of that on offense as a whole.
We want to protect the ball, and I think that's something that we've done a good job this far. Obviously, no turnovers, and hopefully we can keep it up.
Well, we're doing our part, Jalen. We're keeping up here on CTKO. Coming up next, the director of the Bryant Museum, Ken Gaddy, will join me live in studio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more from Tuscaloosa and Nashville on CTKO. It's a quiet morning here in Tuscaloosa. It's usually that way when the Crimson Tide is on the road on a Saturday, but there is still plenty to do if you stayed home for today's game. And one of the things that you can do and should do is go to the Paul W. Bryant Museum right here on the Alabama campus, especially prior to a road game. Here to talk about the fantastic museum and all it has to offer is the director, Ken Gaddy. Good to see you, Ken.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
You know, when Alabama's on the road, now we know by about 2 o'clock people are getting ready to watch the game, but this morning it's been buzzing over at the museum. It's really a great time to go because on game days the crowds can be so large that you can't maybe quite get around and take as much time as you'd like, but on a road game Saturday, it's a good time to visit the museum if you're here in Tuscaloosa.
It's a great time to come to the museum on any game day, whether on the road or at home. Certainly when we're on the road, it's a different environment, different atmosphere. But we still want people to come by and be part of that experience.
You know, there's so many people, and I'm still amazed, that haven't been to the museum. And I'm thinking, if you're an Alabama fan, why not? But for even those people that have been, and we talked about this on my radio show not too long ago, you're changing things up. Let's say you were here 2 years ago. Well, if you come back this year, it's a totally different museum, especially in terms of keeping up with what Saban's doing here at Alabama.
Right. So 2 years ago, there was another national championship, more great players. So Taylor Watson, Brad Green, David Miles, myself, we changed a lot of stuff just right before the season started. So we have new exhibits out. So more Saban stuff has come. There's more to come. And it's a good thing that we always had to catch up with Coach Saban and the team.
And another aspect that I know people enjoy, particularly during the summertime when it's really hot, to come inside and enjoy the air conditioning, but it's the little theater that you have. And, you know, you can sit down, and I know for a long time it was Coach Bryant movie, but you've got an ability to play videos for people. And there's other video outlets throughout the museum for people to watch.
Yeah, video is a big part of our collections and what we have there. So we have films back to the 1930s. So we're able to use that in the exhibit hall and use that to help tell the story. So it's a great place to come with the family, you know, and I enjoy seeing mom, dad, the grandparents with the kids. So that family experience is what we want to see.
We just saw Coach Bryant's office, and now we're looking at some really old artifacts there. But the Coach Bryant's office, we've heard so much about that sunken coach, but that is it. You recreated his office down to a T, down to the pencils and the pens and the notepads. If you never got an opportunity to sit in that office, you can go see exactly what it was like inside Coleman Coliseum 35 years ago.
Yeah, we have players that come back that remember sitting on that couch and how far they sank down into it and had to look up at Coach Bryant behind his desk. I've had two want to climb up there and see if their legs were cut off that couch. They sunk so low down. So he knew how to use psychology way back then.
And one thing, too, it's the Paul W. Bryant Museum, and certainly Coach Bryant's a huge part of this museum. But all the coaches since are reflected in the museum, and the rich history prior to Coach Bryant. That's what makes Alabama unique in Southern football. It didn't start with Coach Bryant. Coach Wade, Coach Thomas won national champions. In fact, it was Coach Wade's Rose Bowl victory that put Southern football on the map. All that's documented. So if you're a younger fan or if you're someone who doesn't understand the rich tradition and history of Alabama football prior to Coach Bryant, this is an opportunity to learn about it.
Yeah, so we started with the first team in 1892, go all the way through last week. We thought that was so important. We have that timeline. We also wrote a book about that so people could go back and learn about those championships. We say 16, so we need to know why 16.
That's right. Yeah.
How we got there.
And it's not very expensive. Admission is reasonable. Tell us about the hours, the admission, and I know you want as many folks to come see you as you can.
We're open 9 to 4, 7 days a week, so we'll be open tomorrow after the game. People coming through, bring their family and friends out and see us. It's $2 for adults, $1 for children, $1 for senior citizens. You can go to BryantMuseum.com and learn more, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
And also a great merchandise store inside the museum for authentic Alabama merchandise. Thank you so much, Ken.
Great. Thanks for having us. Roll
Visit
Tide.
the museum as soon as you can. We'll keep it here on Crimson Tide Kickoff. Coming up, we explore the Commodores. Why it appears Derek Mason has the Vanderbilt program headed in the right direction. That's next here on CTKO, presented by Alpha Insurance.
Vanderbilt's on the rise. We're doing great things on West End. These guys are primed and ready to go. It's a different season for us.
And good morning. Welcome back to CTKO. Now, that was Derek Mason back in July at the SEC Media Days in Hoover. He had an inkling they were going to be pretty good. He's in his 4th season now in Nashville, but as he said, he feels like Vanderbilt is on the rise, and the Commodores are generating excitement on the West End. That has not always been the case. An Alabama-Vanderbilt game isn't usually a marquee matchup, but it is a series that goes back well over 100 years. 1903 was the first time these two teams got together. Now, we don't have video of that game, but you're looking at November 25th, 1937. This game was in Nashville, and the Tide won 9-7. It was part of a run in the 30s where the Crimson Tide beat the Commodores 9 out of 10 games. Now, Vanderbilt, believe it or not, had the edge in this series over the first 50 years or so, but in the last 50, it's been all Alabama. In September of 1985, the Tide was coming off its first loss against Vanderbilt in 15 years, but Bama was about to begin an impressive winning streak. Behind freshman running back Bobby Humphrey, the Tide shook off a sluggish start and rolled over the Commodores 40-20, and Alabama has not lost to Vanderbilt since. Now, Saban's first season with the Tide was the last time Alabama played a game in Nashville. It was Coach's first road win at Alabama and his first SEC win at the Capstone. But it wasn't much of a contest in 2007. Terry Grant ran over the Doors defense for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Saban just continued in what is now a 21-game winning streak over Vanderbilt. Now, overall, the Tide leads the series 59-19-4, and I mentioned that 21-game winning streak dating back to '85. In all, Alabama's been much better at home, but still pretty impressive in Nashville, winning 27 of the 43 games played at Vanderbilt Stadium. In fact, Nashville has been good to the Tide since 1969. That's the last time the Commodores beat the Tide in Tennessee, 1969. Now, this is only the 3rd matchup between the Commodores and the Tide in the Saban era. He has won the previous 2 by a combined score of 58-10. Now, those numbers say a lot. When Alabama and Vanderbilt meet on the football field, it's usually not much of a contest. But as Derek Mason said, he thinks this year is different. And a lot of that has to do with the leadership from Coach Mason and the stingy Commodores defense. Vanderbilt beat Middle Tennessee in Murfreesboro 28-6 in week 1, then followed that up with a thrashing of Alabama A&M in Nashville 42-0. Now, last week, as we mentioned, it was the Commodores outlasting 18th ranked Kansas State 14-7. Only 13 points allowed in 3 weeks. But Coach Saban says it's not just the defense. He sees a complete football team when he watches the Vanderbilt Commodores.
They do a great job of executing both sides of the ball. And I think the results that they've gotten so far this season certainly bear that out. The quarterback's a really good player. He's very efficient in what he does with their offense, run and pass. They make some explosive plays. They run the ball effectively. They're physical. Same way on defense. So there's no question about the buy-in to the program and the job that he's done there.
Coach saying the offense is solid, but it's been the defense. The defense has been spectacular. Vanderbilt leads the nation in total D, allowing under 200 yards per game. They lead the nation in the most important statistics, scoring defense just a little over 4 points per game. Number 1 in pass defense, opponents are averaging under 100 yards through the air. And in the Commodores SEC rankings, they lead the conference in sacks with 10. But you heard Coach Saban bring up the quarterback. Junior Kyle Shermer is number 1 in the SEC in completion percentage at 71%. But let's go back to that D. There is a lot of talent scattered through the Vanderbilt depth chart. They've recruited well on that side of the ball, but it's also a unique, complex scheme. You'll see a lot of movement, a lot of weird fronts, a lot of movement prior to the snap. Some of that is to confuse the offense. Some of it is just reactionary. But no matter, it requires intense focus from the Alabama offensive line.
We have to be stronger communication. It happens every week. People are going to shift, people are going to move, but you have to be able to go out and execute, even without maybe even saying something to your fellow offensive linemen. You all have to be on the same page.
We'll really get a chance to see how good the Vanderbilt defense is today against Alabama's offense. Let's head back out to Nashville, where Brandon Cameraman has more on what the fans think of the Commodores' D.
Thanks, Gary. The numbers don't lie when it comes to Vanderbilt's unrelenting defense, or do they? A shutout win over Alabama A&M is good, but it is Alabama A&M. Allowing 6 points to Middle Tennessee, all right, but Middle Tennessee scored only 3 points against Minnesota last week, and then holding Kansas State to 7. That looks good. The Wildcats had 110 points in their first 2 games combined, but those 2 games were against Central Arkansas and Charlotte. So is Vanderbilt's defense that good, and will it be able to hold down the Tide this afternoon? That's what we asked the fans on Twitter, and here were their answers. How many points will Alabama score against the Commodores? Most voters seem to think Vandy isn't going to continue its defensive dominance. In fact, 9 of 10 voters say Alabama scores 20 or more this afternoon. Nearly half of all voters think Bama puts up 30 on the Commodores. 8% say the Tide scores somewhere between 10 and 19 points, while merely 2% have Bama in single digits. Now, regardless of what the fans on Twitter think, the Commodores are confident. That's sort of a theme throughout the show. Vanderbilt is confident, bordering on cocky. But why not? This is a huge game for the program. A win for Vandy changes everything. Now we're talking top 25 ranking for the first time in nearly 10 years. First win over a top-ranked team in school history. And it would sort of redesign the whole conversation around the SEC East. Either way, the Vanderbilt players are eager to show the nation what Commodore football has become.
That's a huge opportunity for us. We've been waiting for this as a defense to show ourselves on the national stage, and that's what we have the opportunity to do this weekend, so definitely going to make the most of that.
He's got good players, and he's got good coaches, and I think those are the 2 ingredients that you need to have a good football team. They don't beat themselves, they play hard, they're extremely athletic, and that's why they've been one of the best teams in the country.
You could tell Coach Mason has a lot of respect for what Coach Saban has accomplished, but that won't change the message when Vanderbilt takes the field. It's the same message we see everywhere we travel. Beat Bama. Gary, we'll be right back. They'll come back after the break.
A flashback to April 27th, the first round of the NFL draft. Alabama had 4 players chosen in that first round. The Tide did have to wait until pick 16 when the Baltimore Ravens took Marlon Humphrey, but then Bama dominated the rest of the first round. Jonathan Allen, O.J. Howard, and Reuben Foster all going in the top 32. And the Tide will undoubtedly have plenty players chosen early in next year's draft, actually, following this season. Here to talk about that is our man from NFL.com, also the host of Crimson Cover TV, Chase Goodbread. Good to see you, Chase.
Here.
Alabama has certainly become a pipeline to the draft. It's hard to believe that following Coach Saban's first season in 2007, 2008, not a single player was drafted from Alabama. Not one.
And really, when you think back to that year, the pro day prior to that draft was a ghost town.
Yeah.
Hardly any scouts.
No need to come.
I mean, you could hear your voice echo in the indoor on that day. Not the case anymore.
Yeah, looking ahead to 2018 draft, who are just some of the guys that project highly for Alabama?
Well, certainly, I think Bo Scarborough is a name that's going to come up quite a bit on the defensive side of the ball. Minka Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison, certainly Deron Payne. Right. In terms of overall potential, Payne might be the guy you start with. But absolutely, it's looking like another loaded Alabama draft class, and like you said, last year wasn't too bad either. As a matter of fact, the interesting thing about this past draft class, Reuben Foster ended up being the 4th of the 4 to go in the first round, and yet at this point, even though he's hurt right now, there's probably more buzz about him than any of them.
Yeah, his talent's immense. Let's get to today. I said it earlier in the show. We've talked about it the entire show. It's been the theme. Vanderbilt seems to really have a genuine belief, not just a false bravado, but a genuine belief that they can hang in with the Tide this afternoon. Is that warranted?
I think, well, if you're Vanderbilt, I think you don't have a choice.
Right.
You've got, if you can't exude confidence at 3-0, then and you're Vanderbilt, then when can you exude it? But it's an impressive team on both sides of the ball to this point in the season. Disruptive, highly disruptive defensively. 28 tackles for loss on the year as a team. That's roughly 9 a game through 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So they make some big plays on defense to stymie drives, and then on offense, interestingly, the running game has gotten off to a slower start than you'd expect for a 3-0 Vanderbilt team. Ralph Webb hadn't really gotten off like most people expect, but Shermer's been excellent.
Finally, for Alabama, this is old hat. The 2:30 CBS time slot going into a hostile environment, kind of new for Vanderbilt. That a factor at all, you think?
You know, I'll say this about the crowd. You mentioned the 2007 game, Nick Saban's first SEC game at Alabama back then. That was in Nashville.
Yeah.
I covered that.
I was there too.
And I'll tell you. You maybe 50-50 it looked at one point. Probably wasn't quite 50-50, but that's not going to be the case this year. I think Vanderbilt, from what I understand, the students have sold out their own allotment, and it's going to be, I think, a lot harder ticket for an Alabama fan now. Nashville's a better sports town now. I definitely think it'll be more black and gold than 07.
Real quick score prediction.
Oh, I'll go 27-13 Alabama. How's that?
Thank you, Chase.
All right.
Sounds good. Good to see you, man.
Yep.
And still to come, Chase Goodbread's co-host on Crimson Cover TV, John Copeland, cooks a special kickoff cooking dish with Debbie Sanford. That's next on CTKO.
You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
I think we got things to work on relative to some of the other areas in the kicking game. We missed a couple field goals. We got a couple blocked because we didn't have really good protection. So, we really need to work hard on, that part of it.
Thanks for keeping it tuned to WVUA 23 and Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris, live inside our studios inside Bryant Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Now, there isn't a lot to complain about since Nick Saban took over the Alabama football program, but place kicking has been an issue at times. Johnny Congdon has more on Saban's perceived Achilles heel.
Since Nick Saban arrived on the campus of the University of Alabama, all the Crimson Tide have done is win. Legends were born on the offense in the faces of Heisman Trophy winners such as Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry. On the defensive side of the ball, names like C.J. Mosley and Jonathan Allen helped build this dynasty to what it is today. Special teams, however, place kicking has been inconsistent since Nick Saban's arrival in 2007. In that time frame, Alabama place kickers are a combined 67%. Alabama's last two kickers, Cade Foster and Adam Griffith, were career 69.5 and 56.8% kickers, respectively. 2017 now, enter Andy Papanastis. A transfer from Ole Miss, Papanastis is now the primary place kicker for the Crimson Tide, and he's relishing his opportunity.
I'm really getting into a rhythm, getting more into a routine. Confidence is really huge. When it comes off my foot, I'm already giving the guys high fives for blocking for me. It's really important that they get down there for me, and they take a lot of pride in it.
Papanastis is a combined 7 for 9 overall this season, and his teammates have faith when he attempts a kick, it's going in.
Yeah, that's great. We love having a guy like that because even if we kind of stall, and we want to score a touchdown every drive. So, we're hoping he's kicking more PATs than field goals. But, if something we do stall or whatever we're on their side of the field, it's good to know that we can get 3 points out of it.
If he on the field and kicking the ball, I got a lot of confidence in it that he's going to make it. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to miss it.
If his early success is indicative of things to come, no one will be happier than Nick Saban.
I'm pleased with it so far. He's done a good job. He's done especially a good job in the area, inside the 42-yard line, 42-yard field goals, which is kind of, what our expectation is for him. So I think he's done a really good job so far.
For Crimson Tide Kickoff, I'm Johnny Condon.
And we'll keep with the kicking theme, our kickoff cooking segment, sponsored by Sanford Restaurant Equipment and Ziegler Meats.
Welcome back to Kickoff Cooking. Debbie, what are we doing today?
Well, today we're just going to take a little break. We're going to do something easy. What we have today is a charcuterie tray, which is just a fancy word for meat and cheese tray.
Okay, meat and cheese. I can do meat and cheese. I can do that.
And we have some really cool condiments to go with these different Ziegler meats.
Now, I know what that is. I've had that before.
What is that?
Now, that's sauce meat.
That's exactly what it is.
That's old school meat from when I was a kid. I remember that.
People in the South call it South meat. It's one of Ziegler's best sellers.
You know, back when I was younger, we was to slice. We get the slices, put on some bread, put some hot sauce on that thing, and eat it.
They sell it in the chunk form, which I used here, and I just cubed it up. And they also sell it in the slices where you can make a sandwich out of it.
Yes.
And a lot of people buy that. I mean, that's what they do.
It's good stuff to me. I like that.
It's good stuff, and we're fixing to try it in a minute. Also have some garlic bologna.
Okay.
And this is just this thick slice, and I just quartered it. Ziegler also makes it in a roll form where you can just make rounds, which looks nice.
We had that before. That's really good.
That is good. We grilled it.
Yes.
It's yummy. And then we have a pepper loaf that just has like different peppers in it. And I got some Gruyere cheese because that's one of my favorites. You made a comment.
I smelled that cheese. I don't know. I'm scared of that. Now, that's the one thing we've had. I'm a little afraid of that.
Well, if I'm going to try sauce and pepper jelly with you, you can eat Gruyere with me.
Okay, deal.
All right, deal.
That's the deal.
And also has some smoked Gouda, which is pretty much everybody's favorite. So let's just sample our cheese tray.
I'm going to get me a piece of this sauce meat.
All right.
Some of this god-awful smelling cheese.
The Gruyere. I think you're going to like it. I'm actually going to follow your suit with the sauce. I'm going to be brave, even though I had it as a child also.
Now, do I need to put mustard on here or something else?
That's the beauty of the cheese tray.
Well,
you pick whatever you like.
Try a little bit of this.
That's a horseradish mustard. It's great. I'm going to go with this pepper jelly. So let's taste of that.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
I'm going to try some of this bologna with this right here.
I'm going to go with this Gruyere. And
that actually tastes pretty good.
It's good, isn't it? You like that stinky cheese, don't you?
It's awful.
And I'm going to get some of this horseradish mustard.
All right, you ready?
I am.
That Ziegler garlic bologna, that's some good stuff.
It is good stuff.
That's some really, really good stuff. I like that.
I don't think you can mess it up. There's no way.
Well, you did it again and you didn't even cook anything.
I know. We are so awesome. Unbelievable.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Where's my invite to join John and Debbie for one of these segments? I'm always so hungry after watching that. Lunch is close. Stick around. Our next guest will join me live here in studio. Alabama rowing coach Larry Davis will break down all the improvements with the rowing team, the facilities. They're expecting some big things. You'll hear about it next here on CTKO.
Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Brandon Cameraman here with your Pepsi Fan Cam. And joining me for the Pepsi Fan Cam is Judd. And Judd, where are you coming in from?
Originally coming in from Fayetteville, North Carolina, but as of the last couple of months, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. You a lifelong Alabama fan?
Lifelong Alabama fan, grew up in Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh, there you go. And you're coming in for this Vanderbilt game. And over the years, a Vanderbilt-Alabama rivalry hasn't been much to, get excited about. But this year, 2 3-0 teams. What are you expecting?
What I'm expecting, Vandy's got a very, very good defense, and the offense is very smart with Schomer. I'm expecting for Vandy to come out and actually play pretty decent against us for maybe the first quarter, and then the adjustments are going to take over. And I actually picked the game as 37 for us. I know it's a weird score, but that's 2 field goals. Actually 3 field goals, but 37-10 Bama. I think the second half, I think we're, no pun intended, going to get rolling, and I think the defense is going to get off the snide and actually get a touchdown with on themselves. Yeah.
There you go. Vandy's averaging under 5 points allowed per game, but you're thinking Alabama goes out and the offense shows up.
I do, and if you look who Vandy's played against, no offense to them, other than K-State, they haven't really faced any offensive juggernauts. And being able to switch in Bo, Damian, Josh Jacobs, who's healthy now, and of course Najee, I think that's just finally going to wear them down. And I also think that the receivers are going to have a big day, and that Jalen's going to get that passing game worked out.
Now, there's some excitement around this Vanderbilt program. You said you got in Thursday night.
Yes,
Have you noticed Vanderbilt fans? Are they getting excited for this game?
I've still noticed them being really quiet. I mean, as we've been walking around, my wife and my family, we've noticed some Vandy folks. They're still staying quiet. I think they realize it's something to be excited about, and the SEC East is very open. But I think they realize it's a different animal coming in this weekend.
What split do you expect in the stands? How many Alabama fans versus Vanderbilt fans?
I think it's going to be closer to 50-50. As we're looking at tickets, I think Vandy folks are going to show up because, again, it's the #1 team in America. And how many opportunities do we have? I mean, it'll be 10 years before Alabama comes back here. So I think it's going to be 50-50.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, Judd. And we'll go back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Brandon. That guy is fired up. And another guy fired up is Larry Davis, the rowing coach here at the University of Alabama, and good reason. Program's only 10 years old. You have come so far in 10 years. It's amazing. From literally not having a boat to now a boathouse. It's just, tell us about all the progress you've made.
Well, beyond just the fact that the team is growing and we're starting to get into where we're getting some international recruits in. It looks like we've got one release right now committed for next fall. Wow. We've also got a really nice facility, which is a big shot in the arm, and those go hand in hand. Without facilities, it's hard to get the kind of athletes that's going to commit 4 years to Alabama and row out of a portable trailer, you know. So it's something where now when we have the actual great facilities, we're starting to see the results of our efforts as far as getting those people in.
Yeah, we're watching how fast these girls go. It's amazing to me. They fly on that water. But you said it. It's no different than any other sport. You've got to get top-tier athletes, and that requires some international recruiting, and that's starting to happen for Alabama. You got a great product to sell here.
Yeah. You can't get better than that, and it's just something where beyond the facilities, there's very few campuses that have basically the dorms, and you're within 100 yards of the boathouse in the river. And a great river at that.
Yeah, terrific body of water. All right, tell us what you got coming up. I know you're going to Chattanooga in a couple of weeks, and then in November, you're going to be right here on the White Warrior River.
Yeah. We have 4 races this fall. We're going to be coming up on the 14th of October. We're going to be in Chattanooga at the Chattanooga Head Race. Then the next week, we're in Boston at the head of the Charles. And then at the beginning of November on the 4th and 5th, we're back in Chattanooga at the head of the Hooch, which is one of the biggest regattas in the United States in addition to the head of the Charles. And then for the first time in a couple of years, we have University of Central Florida coming here, and we'll have a home race against them on the 11th of November.
All right, folks, mark your calendar for the November 11th, that Saturday. This is a really fun sport to watch, and the river is beautiful in the fall. Coach Davis, appreciate your time,
Thank you.
Man.
Appreciate it.
And we'll be back with more Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by Alpha Insurance right after this. Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff, brought to you by Alpha Insurance. I'm Gary Harris. We're less than 3 hours away from kickoff in Nashville between Alabama and Vanderbilt, and we're still a few months away from the Alabama baseball season. But the Crimson Tide and first-year head coach Brad Bohannon held their first fall practice this past week. Of course, Keith Holcomb, Alabama starting linebacker, will not be participating in baseball practice, but he still plans to join the team in the spring. Although absent from the fall workouts, Holcomb said he regularly talks to his baseball teammates.
It's good vibes over there. I mean, I'm excited to get over there, but like you said, it's football season. That's my main focus, but I'll be keeping in touch with the guys over there.
And we're keeping in touch with the weather here in Tuscaloosa and in Nashville. Danielle Davis now with more on a hot football Saturday forecast. Danielle.
Gary, it is warm across the entire southeast this afternoon. Temperatures in Tuscaloosa climbing as we move further into the day. By kickoff here in Tuscaloosa, we're looking at 90 degrees. Very hot day here, and it's going to be even hotter up in Nashville. Mostly sunny skies for kickoff at 2:30 p.m. at 90 degrees. And by the end of the game, only cooling down just 2 degrees. So stay hydrated and wear lots of sunscreen if you plan to go to the game today. Gary.
Thank you, Danielle, and let's go out to Nashville one final time with Brandon and Zach for our wild predictions of the week.
Thanks, Gary. Last week I actually hit on my wild prediction, but I realized it really wasn't that bold. I had Colorado State within 2 scores at halftime. Not bold enough, so we're going back to being wild because that's what we do here. I have Bo Scarborough rushing for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. We went over how good the Vanderbilt defense has been, but it's been better against the pass than the run, and I think Scarborough is poised for a big game. So look for big number 9 to roll over the Commodores this afternoon. Zach, it's your turn. Go bold or go home.
I'm going to go bold. I almost hit on mine last week as well. I predicted 300 yards for Jalen Hurts passing last week. He ended up with 248, but I think if he stayed in, he would have gotten to that 300 number. I'm going back to defense this week. 2 defensive touchdowns for the Crimson Tide against the Commodores this afternoon. That's my bold prediction.
All right, Gary, we want to hear your bold prediction. Go for it.
And I'm going defense, too. Rashaan Evans makes his comeback. He plays more outside linebacker than inside linebacker, and he boosts the Bama pass rush. I say Rashaan Evans gets 2 sacks against Shermer this afternoon in Nashville for that Bama defense. Well, thanks to Zach and Brandon in Nashville. Thanks to our crew here in Tuscaloosa, and thanks to all of our loyal viewers out there for tuning in each and every Saturday to CTKO. We'll be right back here next week, same time, as Alabama hosts Ole Miss for the second SEC game of the season. I'm Gary Harris, reminding you to join Johnny Congdon tonight on WVUA 23 News at 10 for a complete recap from Nashville with Brandon and Zach on the Alabama-Vanderbilt game. And, of course, keep it tuned to WVUA 23 all through the week as we get you ready for Ole Miss next week. Okay, for everybody here at CTKO, once again, I'm Gary Harris. Have a great, great Saturday and enjoy the game, everybody. Roll Tide.